all right. Last but definitely not least is Sajan. Also, just about the ads, HNS Switch. Definitely check it out. Totally free app made by Alex Neto in the community. So I gave him a 5-star review. Obviously, there's some Twitter thread about it, but it costs nothing to download and use an app. It helps, of course, especially a review. So if you're comfortable with that, I think it's both iOS and Android. And it's just a quick price. So if you're in auctions or whatever, you can quickly convert to your local currency. Just check it out. They chipped in too for the event. I really appreciate that. So definitely try to get it. And now I'm excited. I think, Sajan, I won't put you on a spot, but I think you were a really well-received speaker last year, and I enjoyed it too. So
thank you.
And happy Holi. Is it the holiday now or
Holi? No. It's just a one-day festival where people just rave and drink a lot of alcohol and plaster color on each other.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Wow, maybe I gotta come next time then.
So, yeah.
All right. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll Agaamin. I want to think everybody's excited about the India market and your registry. I'm using it at Sky Include, with the systems, and others are curious. So I want to hear what you have to say, and I'll let you take it away. I'm going to be behind the stage. I'm just checking. Do you have the slides?
No. Right. Just a question.
The slides, right?
Yeah. So if I share the screen from mine, will just be the screen?
Totally fine. There's going to be a few choices. You can upload PDF only, or you can share like a Chrome tab or full screen.
I have a PDF, so I'm just trying to do that.
It's better if you upload a PDF. Okay, great.
So there we go.
All set. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Take it away.
All right, guys. So thank you for being here. I'm Sajan from Agaamin. Most of you would know me. So we're just going to keep it short and sweet, 30 minutes. So we will talk about certain activities we undertook last year and some insights we've gleaned from those activities. We believe that it would be useful not just for us, but also for the larger community. And what are we doing as Agaamin as a result of those insights that we've had an opportunity to glean from our activities? So So we went into public beta in early 2022, and we had quite a strong start. The local media covered us, prominent newspapers covered us, a lot of the digital blogs covered us, and everything looked pretty good. We had a lot of registrations happening, and things were like pretty rosy. However, somewhere towards the middle of the year, and I suspect that would be the case with a lot of the registrars and registries, except for maybe the name chiefs who have a huge customer base already, would have seen a slowdown in the registrations. Naturally, it was a concerning thing, and we decided that we needed to get to the root of the problem as to what was it that was causing the slowdown. A lot of it could have been the bear market. The NFT craze was dying out, so a lot of people who were part of the NFT crowd and the crypto crowd were buying this stuff up. And as things were slowing down, probably they were just backing out of the market. But we felt that there had to be more than that, because at no point did we really position ourselves in that way in our domestic markets, not as an NFT project or any of that. So the slowdown was quite concerning, and we then had a couple of months where we didn't sell a single unit. So I decided to leverage some of my past work experience. I had worked with one of India's largest market research firm, and I decided to do a bit of research ourselves. The research essentially was a combination of quant as well as qual. Quant basically involves creating a questionnaire, about 8 to 10 questions, and administering them to a certain subset of people. And qual basically involved focus groups. A focus group is one where you have given a specific subject to the group to discuss upon, and then you have a freewheeling kind of a group setting as well, where you just let people talk freely. You just throw a more wider generic subject and let people talk about it. Now, the research was conducted over a period of 4 months, because 500 to 700 people, if anybody who's got a bit of research background would know, trying to zoom into the right kind of people and then getting 500 to 700 of those is a huge activity, especially if you're a bootstrapped company who's just basically doing it hand to hand, and you're not exactly using any mass media vehicles. So the reason I put 500 to 700 is because 500 was the target, but then we exceeded it, so I stopped counting after 500. So I think we must have clocked another 100 after that. The audience was essentially based out of India, but because Handshake is a global thing, and we felt that the insights should be at least applicable to people worldwide, we tried to find people who were in the age group between 20 to 45, metropolitan and mostly multicultural in terms of their consumption of music, movies, cuisine, clothing, and vacations. Mostly internationalists, if you could call it that way, so that we could at least try and get some semblance of representation that might be relevant to even people who are outside of India. That gender breakup of 75 to 25 is not intentional. It's just maybe Asian cultures, it's a little more difficult to just walk up to women and administer them a questionnaire. So that's why it's that way. So I don't want to get into the details of what happened in the research and stuff. I'm just going to straight away get to the insights and some of the learnings we've had, and what are we doing as a result of those learnings, and maybe it might be applicable to some of the other startups here as well. First, Handshake is not an end user product. Many may disagree with me, and that's fine. But just bear with me as I take you through where we are coming from. It is very clearly a B2B sell, 100%. And especially after this research, I always suspected it, but after this, I am very clear. So what exactly is Handshake? So it's a replacement for the root zone. Sure, we all know that. I mean, it's just right up there on the website, but I have seen many people in the community, and including myself, coming from very sincere intentions, where we try to sell or get the end user interested in Handshake. But it's basically a no starter, because let's take a look at the legacy internet. ICANN manages the root zone. And then you have a VeriSign, which is the most popular registry with .com. Then you have a GoDaddy. You could replace that with Namecheap. Then you have entities like Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail. And then you have the end user. So the root zone is essentially the first layer of the DNS setup, and the end user is typically the fifth layer. There are 4 layers in between. And most of the time, the guy who's typing facebook.com into a browser does not even know about the existence of ICANN. That is how far removed he is from the so-called root zone of the internet. So if 10 years back, if I had to tell somebody, hey, did you know that the internet or the DNS namespace is managed by some organization called ICANN, they'd probably go, oh, really? Oh, okay, good for me. And they'd just move on. And that's pretty much the end of their involvement with it. If we had to look the same thing up, say, with Handshake, we have registries and registrars kind of getting clubbed into one with many of the companies. But again, the end user is typically the fifth if there is a registrar, or the fourth layer if it's clubbed. And again, Handshake is the first. So again, there are multiple layers between the end user and the root zone, or so-called Handshake, the project that we are talking about. So this is, of course, if we look at it from a domain perspective. Now, both Agaamin and we have startups like Superlink who are looking at it as user IDs. So if you look at it as a user ID, sure, we managed to cut a layer off. You don't need an entity. But again, Handshake is the first layer, and the end user is the fourth or the third layer, depending on what that structure is like. So Superlink is a registrar rolled into one. So in their case, it would be at least third layer. So again, the user is far away from Handshake. So today, if you were to go and say, hey, remember we spoke about ICANN? Now it's been decentralized with Handshake. And again, the reaction is likely to be, oh, good. And then they'll just move on because, again, it's not relevant to their lives. So the focus needs to shift from Handshake to maybe other things. We'll get to what those other things are. So again, that other thing is going to be use cases or utilities. And even there, depending on how it is being presented, the use case and the utility would vary. If you were to look at the whole thing as a domain name for entities, I mean, everybody's everywhere, but say by the looks of it, the most prominent startup or the Namecheap is not a startup, it's a big company, is Namecheap, and their collection of TLDs seem to support the domain usage more. So in their case, you have the handshake, and then you have the Namecheap entity, and then you would have a B2B entity, which would be a website or a service, and then you would have the end user. So the use case would have to come directly from the customers of a Namecheap or an entity like that. Now, while I was talking about this, many of us spoke, the word domainer was thrown around a lot as an end user. Now, I'd like to point it out that while domainers may be individuals, but they buy a domain name from a business entity and they usually sell it to another business entity, because unless you're a business, you don't really need a website. So they are just facilitators in a B2B trade. So it's again part of the B2B ecosystem. And if you look at it as a username, then usually the utility comes after the user has bought the name. So in a domain structure, the utility comes first, and then it drives users. As in, you may not be buying the name, but you would be using them to resolve through browsers and so on and so forth. And if you are pushing it as a username, then you may be able to sell the usernames up front. But if you expect continued renewal over the years, then there would need to be use cases. So we're going to be upfront. We've had a significant, while we had a huge number, we didn't have that kind of renewals this year. They dropped almost by 50%. And one reason we attribute is because what do people do with these names? And how long do we expect them to hold on to these names before they can actually use it? So, yeah, so it's a B2B sell. And then the next is use cases. Use cases are the key to ensuring that Handshake succeeds. So we need to get startup ecosystems excited about Handshake. An approach I would like to take in my earlier years, something when I just got into technology, Linux was something I came across. Now, I realized at that time when I ran into Linux that I was using it via many of the services, but I'd never heard of it. And probably that is what is going to happen in the end, where a lot of people will end up using services that are powered by Handshake, but they probably won't ever hear of Handshake by or interact with Handshake by themselves. Sure, as retail investors, they may buy some tokens, but again, I don't expect that market to be big, because if you look at the larger structure, how many people invest in the stock market? How many people invest in mutual funds? If we look at them as a percentage of the larger human race or the larger amount of users on the internet, it's a small percentage. And it's going to be the same with people who buy tokens, maybe even smaller, at least to start out with. So that's not an area I'm a expert in, so I'm just going to leave it to people who are. But as far as use cases are concerned, that is something that we need to essentially focus on, and we have some ideas how we could drive that, how we could get people excited about that, but we'll come to that later in the talk. As I was mentioning, the mojo somewhere is going to be the use cases, and I'm a big fan of using Handshake as usernames. Because there are about 360 million domains so far that get registered on an average every year. But there are 5 billion users on the internet. So that is a huge growth, or a much larger market we can target should we focus on usernames. So the direction that the super links are taking are, that's the way to go. But we still need to create use cases so that these names can get used. And I heard Eskimo talk about HNS chat, and those are the kind of things we need more of, those kind of things to happen in the ecosystem so that these names find expression. So one of the things that happened this was a frame I had created, and this was something I shared with people in the focus groups, because invariably almost everyone As soon as they understood about smart names, the first question they asked is, what can I do with it? And then we showed them this frame, which is, you can use it as a Web3 name, you can use it as a financial ID. And the immediate question is, do you have any services right now where I can use it? And in most cases, I had to go back to saying, no, they're still being built. And you could see the palpable disappointment, because while a lot of us tend to be in a bubble, I don't mean in a handshake bubble, but in a crypto bubble. We are, Bitcoiners, Ethereum guys. So we all understand the idea of raising a lot of money by just showing what is called a white paper. So one piece of paper and people will throw money at you. We've gotten used to that. But the larger world is not used to that. They're not used to throwing money at abstract future concepts. They need something tangible in their hand. If I am giving you $10, I need a soap or a shampoo or a candy. I need something. So that's how the larger people are. So this is something I would like to really harp upon. Okay. So again, we'll get to the use cases later. Third is identities can come in many forms. What do I mean by this? Now we gave them the option to explore what kind of identities they would like, and something very interesting came out of it. The sweet spot was somewhere in the middle of a generic identity and an individual identity. A generic identity, say in my case, would be say Sergeant.Indian or Sergeant.Man. It's just way too generic, and people didn't really relate to that. You could come on the other extreme, which is Sajan.Nair, which is my surname, and people preferred that to the generic one, but they didn't really exactly want to be an island either. Of course, this is not to talk about, this actually opens up a huge opportunity. This is not to talk about startups that are doing things in the identity space like Superlink or even Agaamin. We are heavily stacked up with surnames in the vernacular space, or even a Namecheap, which is single letter alphabets, which are quite generic. But this is actually to encourage the newcomers who might have come into Handshake, or the people who don't have deep pockets and who look at Handshake and think, hey, all the big TLDs are gone. Everything that is useful is already taken. What is in it for me? Let me tell you, we've not even scratched the surface, because people wanted to have their own individual identity. At the same time, they wanted to belong to something. It was almost as if they wanted the best of both worlds. So, say for instance, if I am a student of Harvard, hypothetically for the sake of this discussion, then a Sergeant.American won't work. Sergeant.Nair is okay, but a Sergeant.Harvard would hit the sweet spot. It's not as big as a country, it's much smaller, where I can have my own individual identity, and at the same time, I can belong to some sort of an exclusive club or some sort of exclusive community. So, if you were to suddenly look at things from that perspective, you would find that the whole world is open to us. Of course, the name chiefs and the super links will do amazing things for our community, but not everybody can be huge and big like them. There is a lot of scope for small players. Your local city, your local church, your local communities, colleges, schools, and other small uh, fractionalized breakups of society. Okay, that probably didn't come out right, but fractionalized identifications that people may have within their communities. And I believe there is a lot of scope for TLDs to be auctioned. In fact, we actually had given up auctioning for new TLDs in 2021, because we thought we pretty much had what we wanted. But after this, we again went on a spree, and then we picked up fresh about 500-600 TLDs that are relevant to, at least in the Indian and South Asian context. It's simply impossible for a single individual to get all of them. So I think there is a huge scope for people in all over the world who are part of Handshake to really look at these small micro communities, which can make for extremely lucrative businesses. Maybe not billion-dollar enterprises, but definitely million-dollar enterprises. And I don't think $1 million is bad. So I would encourage everybody to really look at take this aspect, that people want to belong while they retain their individuality. And if you were to look at it from that perspective, then there is a lot of scope for micro registries or micro registrars to come up. So that's the bit about identity. And of course, the last thing, it was very clear to me, this was not a result of the research. This was an inference that I drew as a result of the research, which is existing startups like us will have to do all the heavy lifting when it comes to actually inspiring the next generation of people, not to use, but to build, so that users beyond them can actually get into our or start using products that have handshake at the back end. And one tactic that really worked for us and could work for a lot of others is these days, because of the whole startup ecosystem, almost all colleges that are of some significance have an in-house incubator. And these incubators are not just for the college students, they're open to outsiders as well. I did a lot of study on this, and pretty much any college that's worth its salt has one. And all of you being in prominent countries and cities would have colleges around in your vicinity that would have an incubator or an accelerator. And if you could take away your need for funds or money, because that's when they become really selective about taking you in. So they have these options where you are open, if you are open to being incubated without raising funds. If you can get the funds off the table, then getting into these incubators is not really a problem. You can really get into these incubators. And once you are in a college incubator, you could start by building for that college itself. Typically, all colleges have around 2,000 to 3,000 students. These are builders, people of the next generation, students, getting them excited. In fact, we did that, and we'll share our what we are going to do in that space. So to catch hold of the intellectual cream of a society, which is essentially the college kids and the future, and exposing them to handshake and getting them inspired and then letting them build, is going to be a very lucrative path forward for handshake, because these kids will probably be able to come up with stuff that many of us can't even imagine. So that's pretty much about the research that we did. So I thought we'll just put it out there. So what are we doing about, what is Agaamin doing about them? So, well, uh, first, we are building for the top 100 colleges in India. So we are in conversation with quite a few of them. We've acquired all their TLDs, and we are going to build small ecosystem for the top 100 colleges of India. And we'll start with the IITs and the IIMs. I don't know how many of you are aware of IITs and IIMs. Indians would know. But if you're from, say, from another country, IITs are the equivalent of an MIT for India, and they're seriously high quality colleges and very difficult to get into. And IIMs are the equivalent of business management or those kind of post graduation colleges. And most Indians, 99.99% of Indians in the Silicon Valley, the ones you might run into in the Googles and the Facebooks and the Twitter, would all be from the IITs and the IIMs. They would have gone to either one of them or both. So we're essentially talking about the top 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the intellectual cream of 1/6 of the human race. There are about 23 IITs and 20 IIMs in India. That's 42 colleges. And we will build with all of them. We are incubated with one of them, and we use the same strategy that we said. We kind of took funding off the table, and we presented an interesting concept, and they were happy to have us and incubate us. And once we got incubated with them, then it was easy for us to talk to their students, talk to their student committees, and they got excited about it. And we'll get to that. So we are building for one of the IITs, and in fact, we are going to do it this month. Towards the end of it, they've got some board exams going on right now, and as soon as their exams are over, we will be going to the campus. We will stay on campus for about 10 days, and we will build in public. We will involve the students as we build that registrar system out for them, and the idea is to hand over that registrar system to the student committee so that they can manage it themselves. So they have about 2,000 students currently. They have an alumni of about 5, and every year 500 new students come in. Again, as I said, we are talking about the intellectual cream. So the idea is not just going to be built for them. Of course, they will have an identity that will help them show off their alma mater. I mean, imagine if you were from Harvard, you would want to show off your alma mater, right? Sergeant.Harvard. Oh, okay. Send Bitcoin to Sergeant.Harvard. Okay, that tells volumes about who you are. Even before you're there, your name tells you what you are. So it has a similar effect in India and, of course, worldwide. Now, just like Michelini is associated with this as a registrar, we've also got one in Nepal. They call Akara. The guy was busy. I had invited him for the event, but he unfortunately couldn't make it. But he's going to be here next year. They're quite busy actually, and they got in touch with Kathmandu University. And Kathmandu University has over 25,000 students. Again, the creme de la creme of Nepalese intelligentsia. 25K, including the alumni and stuff. And in this case, we presented to their management, and they were extremely excited about it. They really loved the idea, and the fact that and especially Nepal as an ecosystem is not a very big population. So venture capitalists tend to not really go into that market because, unless you're coming out with a global solution, a national solution is not going to be very big in terms of numbers. So not very scalable. So there is a paucity of investors. So this is also a model you guys could explore. So we went and told them something very exciting. We told them, you know what? We will do now the IIT one we are doing individually. We are doing it in the institute, but the institute management directly has no role to play in it because they are much more evolved ecosystems. But the Nepalese ecosystem was not so evolved. So here we decided to go through the management and we incentivized them and we said, you know what? We will take about 20 to 30% of the revenue that comes and we'll split that with the registry and the registrar. And we will give 70% back to the institute so that they can create a startup fund so that they can fund their kids who built on handshake. So the idea we gave to the Nepalese guys are if your students are gonna build a service on this network, then out of this 70% fund, we can fund them to create their minimum viable products. So that is something the institute really vibed well with. And we are in pretty advanced stages of talk, and we are pretty confident that we will close that deal. There are a couple of other institutes in Nepal that I am directly in conversation with, but they are early stages, so I don't really want to jinx it by talking about it at this stage. But I have a good vibe about them as well because Kathmandu University is like the big enchilada in Nepal. If you take their name, if they are on board, then the rest will kind of just like a domino fall in place. So that's the good news that's coming out of Kathmandu, and that's pretty much what we are doing with the colleges. And we feel that this is a replicable model in other countries, especially US, extremely rich academic ecosystem. Even countries like China, Japan, parts of Europe, all of them have very rich and developed ecosystems. So I think there is a lot of scope there to build these microsystems. Okay, before we go there, there's just one more thing I missed out here. We are also in talks with somebody to create an Arab internet, the GCC countries. They're extremely excited about having an ecosystem that essentially works in their their native language, which is Arabic. And we have a lot of interesting Arabic TLDs, both surname wise as well as generic ones, which can be used in those markets. They put some funds up front to set up a registrar and market it. So we are still in the process of closing the deal. So we'll keep the community informed as and when something develops. So that's the registrar aspect of it. Now I want to come back to the point I had made earlier, which is use case. Now we need use cases. Now, of course, you know, dating apps, chatting apps, all of that can happen. In fact, those can happen in colleges because 2,000 kids, you have that ratio of boys and girls there so that you can have these interesting things happening there. We felt that fintech is a space that really connects with people and there is a genuine need because almost all popular fintech apps worldwide use either identity layers that can be classified as a privacy concern, but people still continue to use it because there is some utility in it, or they are not user friendly. If you're using a wallet, then it would be a phone number. If you're using PayPal, then it would be an email. So they are privacy concerns. And if you're using a crypto wallet, I don't think I need to tell you guys how user unfriendly they are. So we decided to get into the space. Uh, People in India would be aware of it. People abroad may not be. So there is something in India called the Unified Payment App. I'll see if I can give a quick demo. Okay. So this is the app. So that I've already fed in the phone number of my colleague, Dakshita. I'm gonna send her $100. And here I have a choice of my bank accounts. These are my bank accounts. So I choose one, and it asks me for a PIN, which I'm just gonna feed. And that's it. $100 transferred under 3 seconds, bank account to bank account. We're not talking about a wallet. Bank account to bank account. This is a hugely popular protocol in India. In fact, even the average shopkeeper on the street, the uneducated guy, doesn't speak a word of English, has never gone to school, they are on this protocol. I don't have my wallet with me. I wish I could show you my wallet. I have about $10, the equivalent of $10. And that is just in case I need to use cash somewhere. I haven't gone to an ATM for over a year and a half now. Um, Nobody uses cash anymore. We are almost a cashless society. And it has about 500 million users. It's on track to process over 100 billion transactions in 2023. And now this protocol is going to Europe. So France has signed up. So you can expect European countries happening. Middle East has signed up for it. And recently in India, we had the G20 summit, and several agreements were signed up. So 2.0 is coming, which is going to be a global thing. So bank transfers will just happen like that. And the problem with this protocol is it uses phone numbers. It also has an ID, but it's just quite a mouthful. You might as well use a crypto wallet address. So we saw an opportunity here. And especially an insight we observed is women. Women are not very comfortable giving out their phone numbers in P2P environments. My wife and a lot of my friends, whenever they would have the opportunity, they would tell their husbands, fathers, or their grown up sons or brothers to give their numbers. They generally don't want to give their numbers away unless they have to. So we felt, why not build a handshake layer on top of it? Okay. So the stack is going to look a bit like this, where here we just use the HNS, the light node, which does the resolving. So user can enter a smart name and the amount. The resolving would happen, and it would point to a phone number, email address, wallet address, or whatever is the actual identity layer. And then it would just connect to the API. So essentially, you don't change the existing tech stack, whether it's a UPI or you're trying to clone PayPal, or M-Pesa is a popular wallet in the Middle East, or if it's a crypto wallet. You don't really change the tech stack. You just build a new layer on top of it, and that does the resolving, and then everything just works the way it is. So that's what we are working at right now. We are also trying to raise some funds. We are speaking to some investors. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes. So this is our attempt at creating a use case that we feel can really cover a large number of people in one quick go, because UPI already has a huge market and it's expanding quite rapidly. And it is expected that in the next 3 years, it may even overtake the MasterCards and the Visa networks. And that is a big thing. And if we can have handshake tied into something like that, then that's it. We are home. And of course, as I said, the chats and the dating apps and the job sites and the marriage sites, all of that can happen. So that's pretty much it. We are quite at the end of it. I'm happy to take any questions.
As always, I knew you would bring the good stuff. That was amazing. Thank you. I saw a lot. Yeah. Also, your videos are good, right? It's true. I don't know if you want to show a little one of your. Well, people can look them up, or you can link to them. But you do make some good promotional videos and ads. Actually, I think people don't know. Sajan, you've done video before, right? You were like a film
Before
producer.
I got into technology, I was actually, my background is advertising. I started with market research. I spent about 8 years working with advertising agencies, some of the finest networks, Ogilvy, Publicis, Havas networks. And then I had my own production house. So we used to make digital content and films. Um, so that's pretty much where I was, and we had a huge focus on travel. And the pandemic kind of, ended that run. And I was actually wondering what to do, and what I wanted to invest in some sort of a low cap, because I didn't have much money. So I was looking, low cap crypto tokens to buy and hoping that someday it'll become big and I can make some money. So while I was researching, I actually ran into an article. I've spoken about this before. It was a Forbes
Yeah,
article saying
I remember
six
some
six
big
tokens
investors
that
bought.
people are buying up, and then I saw A16Z's portfolio, and it had Handshake in it. So I knew about all the other five tokens, and Handshake seemed new. So that's when I started looking up Handshake, and I looked into Handshake, and of course the domains looked more interesting than the token. So I started buying up domains. Once you have a decent amount of domains, then you're like, you want to do something bigger than yourself. It's not just about then making money for yourself, because I felt that at least I saw genuine need in India where I felt it could be useful. So yeah, wait, what I can do is I'll share the channel link here. So if people like to watch my videos, I'm just gonna put it in the chat. You guys can look it up.
Okay. I think you see the
Yeah,
question from Crook about your solutions ready to
yeah.
go for this.
Uh, my solution, if you mean by the payment app, no, it's work in progress. We are working on it. Also, because it connects, it's actually a layer on top of a standard fiat protocol. There are a lot of regulatory aspects that we need to cover. We are working with a bank called Yes Bank. It's a prominent bank in India. So they are going to be sponsoring the API. You can't get the API directly. So you have the Reserve Bank of India, which is like the Federal Reserve in the United States context. And then you have, say, a bank, maybe like a Chase or a JP Morgan kind of bank. And then if you are building an app, then you get the API for that payment protocol from the bank. So you need a bank to believe in your cause and actually give you the API. So that's the hard part. We've actually managed to convince Yes Bank to take us on board, which is quite surprising that, and the Reserve Bank of India has a very anti-crypto measure, but we were able to convince the bank that, this is the best of blockchain without the minuses of crypto. And they liked that idea. And we told them that the whole crypto layer would be within the company and the average user would not have to know about it. It's essentially about fiat transfers. And so the bank bought into that, and they will sponsor the API for us. So we've crossed that major hurdle. Now we just have to build the front end or the interface, and which is essentially
Okay,
work in progress.
got it. Okay. Yeah, I think people are really excited about all of this. As always, you get us. Let's see. I think in our Q&A. You see Kirk. He's got a lot. I think you two should connect anyway. I think he was the one. He presented just before you, and you were chatting. But I think you two, your
Yes.
two companies.
See,
I
that
think
is
your
not up
company
to
should
us.
talk.
That is not up to us, or that is not really up to the handshake ecosystem. Because, say, if we want to be able to send to Gmail, we can. If you want to send back from Gmail, if you reply, it will come. But if you just type a pure handshake ID into Gmail, it won't come because Gmail does not run the handshake resolver. So you would need a Gmail or a Yahoo Mail to be on board. Which is why I had asked earlier in one of the table sessions to Alex that if the space mail thing from Namecheap would be compatible, because that is again a huge market. If somebody could actually start an email service where they run a handshake resolver, so you can use it with traditional domain names and handshake domain names, you would be disrupting the email market, and that's a market that has not seen disruption for a long time. So yes, we have something called Dakia. We didn't really talk about it. We did talk about it last time. We've been working on it. We've not really pushed it because of the exact same reason you spoke about. Because whenever we tested it, the response from the traditional mail would go into spam and stuff like that. And Gmail has
Yeah.
these segregation. They have the primary mail and updates and stuff, and it usually does not always come into the primary. And then, of course, with puny codes, it gets marked as spam by many of the email servers. So a bit of these problems, teething problems, are still there. But someone like Namecheap, which is a much bigger entity, would have the power to create a disruptive service and then put in the resources to push that.
Awesome. All right. I think I think maybe you two should connect, and the others we could always reach out to you. Maybe that's a good one. How do people?
Yeah,
You put your
I put
Twitter, that's
my
your Twitter.
Twitter thing, and if anybody who would like to reach out to us, please reach out to us. Anybody who would like to work with a college and they need to connect with us, they need some help, so that you can build a small ecosystem
Yeah,
which does not cost much. We are happy to help. So yeah, there's a lot to be done, and that's that.
that's great. Yeah, I think a lot of people here are excited. And yeah, we work together. You could also help with tech. I know some people need tech help, and I know maybe you could also help with that.
Yes, we
But
can.
I think I got actually another appointment in a few minutes,
All
so
right.
I think
Thank you,
we'll wrap up.
everybody. It's been a
But
pleasure.
yeah, thank you, Sajan, as always.
Cheers.
And then we'll do a closing for everybody, and in a minute, I'll just go through leaderboard and closing one more.